my name is Madeline and welcome to my channel. Today I thought it would be fun to sit down and do a recommendations video. It has been a long time since I have done a recommendations video. I've just been talking a lot about the recent books I've been reading, and while that is fun, it is fun to also kind of comb through the books that I've read the past couple of years and kind of group things together and think about some of the books that I've really enjoyed and why I've enjoyed them and get to share those with you. So that's what I have for you today. This is a winter reads recommendation, perfect for the winter time. Personally, winter is not my favorite season. I don't love the cold, darkness of it, but I find that it is my favorite season for reading, and there's just such a coziness and warmth to a lot of these books that are set in the winter time that I just absolutely devour. And some of these books I just have such fond memories of reading, and every year I just look so much forward to my winter reading. So I have a whole bunch of books here, not necessarily divided into genre. I have a couple of genre groupings, but I thought it would be fun to kind of group these books in other ways, find other ways that they're similar. And so that's kind of what I've done. There are some that I just couldn't really fit in anywhere else, so they're just little genre groups. But hopefully you can find something to read this winter, or that it'll just inspire you with your winter reading. Without further ado, let's just jump into the books. So the first grouping of, I believe, 3, maybe 4 books is one of my favorite kind of things to find in a story, and that is where there is this older character, typically older, and they're kind of grumpy and you know, kind of have this pessimistic view maybe on life. And in comes a child, and the child kind of changes their world, and so much joy and light into their life, and you know, that kind of story. And I find that just so heartwarming any time of the year, but if you throw in a nice winter setting, I eat it up. So the first book in this kind of category is The Woods in Winter by Stella Gibbons. I read this book last winter and I really enjoyed it. So like I said, it totally fits the bill. We have this woman who has inherited this house in the countryside, and she is not super friendly. She has a hard time making friends, doesn't really have a lot of people in her life, and she moves out to the countryside in this house, and eventually this young boy shows up at her door, and she is taking care of him and develops this kind of friendship with him, and it's really sweet to kind of see her character softening over time a little bit with this boy who shows up. Lots of great descriptions of the snow and winter and coldness, and yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I want to read more by Stella Gibbons. Then we have Silas, Marner by George Eliot. This is a short little classic that really packs a punch. I read this last October, and honestly, I still think about this book very regularly. It is one that I hope to reread soon. We're following Silas, who has been cast off from his community when he was young for something that wasn't really his fault. And he settles in this new village. He builds a life for himself. He's pretty successful, but he's kind of a recluse. And eventually he finds this little baby in a snowstorm. And, you know, we just see the effect that this child has on Silas. And it's such a beautiful story. It definitely has kind of a fairy tale-like feeling to it. And yeah, George Eliot's writing is obviously stunning. It is a book that I had to work a little bit harder at, but was so rewarding. Some really beautiful insights into how a child can change your life, and I loved this book so much. Now for a middle grade, we have Astrid the Unstoppable by Maria Parr. This was originally written in Norwegian and translated, and so it takes place in Norway. Obviously, you have a very wintry cover, and this one is a little bit different in the sense that Astrid and, what is his name, Gunvald. Astrid and Gunvald, who is, Gunvald is this older person in the town where she lives. He's her godfather, I think, actually. You know, she's known him her whole life. They are like best friends, and it's this really sweet friendship between Astrid, this young girl, and this older man. And we see kind of over the course of the story how she is able to help him and, you know, kind of deal with some things of his past that he has been avoiding. There's some fun references to Heidi, so if you love Heidi, I think you would really enjoy this book. And just a lot of wintry coziness, lots of skiing, and descriptions of life in Norway. This was a lot of fun, and I think is definitely an underrated middle grade book. Then my next book kind of straddles this category and the next category, so it'll be double dipping a little bit, and that is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. This I read many years ago and remember just loving the writing. It is so beautiful, and it's a really interesting story. We're following this count, this Russian count, who is basically on house arrest in a hotel. He is living in this hotel, he can't leave, and there's this young girl who is also in the hotel who he forms a little bit of a friendship with, and there's a really sweet story there. I just loved all of the details of the hotel and what it would be like to be kind of trapped in this space, but also he's developing this life for himself, this community, and it's a book I would like to return to at some point. All right, so that leads us into our next little section, which is books set in Russia. If you want cold descriptions, a cold setting, then Russia is obviously a great choice for that. And I just really find myself gravitating towards books set in Russia in the wintertime. It's just something I always enjoy. There's Romanov by Nadine Brands, I think? Brandis? This is historical fantasy, which I'm discovering is something I really enjoy, having that historical setting that feels very familiar, but then adding some fantastical elements to it. So we're obviously following the Romanov family. They have been sent to Siberia, and we see what their life is like living in house arrest with all of these guards controlling them and whatnot. And there's some beautiful, beautiful writing in here, beautiful descriptions of kind of how they navigate these challenges. And then there's a fantastical element with some Russian nesting dolls in particular. I loved the writing of this. It is just absolutely stunning, really, really descriptive in terms of the setting, and I just remember this book made me feel cold. And I always love when a book can just transport you that well into another place. Then we have Angel in the Square by Gloria Whelan. And this is YA historical fiction. And I loved this book so much. This is another one that I think is highly underrated. It's so beautiful, the writing. And we are following this girl whose mother becomes kind of a lady in waiting to the Tsaress, the wife of the Tsar. I don't know what you call her, but she becomes her lady in waiting, and so they move into the palace, and the daughter comes with and kind of befriends the Romanov children. And we see kind of the unfolding of the Russian Revolution through the eyes of these close friends to the Romanov family. Beautiful, beautiful story. And the series, it's actually part of a series that I believe are not connected. They just kind of span Russian history from different points of view at different kind of critical moments. So I'm excited to read some more of those because, like I said, love a book set in Russia during the winter time. And I thought this one was really, really well done. Next up, I have a couple of classics that just didn't really fit in anywhere else. And the first one is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I would have thought before reading this book that it was more of an autumnal read, you know, just because of the way Frankenstein has made its way into pop culture. You just think of it as like an October Halloween kind of book. It is a winter book. 100%. There's lots of good winter scenes. There's lots of traveling. We're going to some very cold places. And I don't really think I need to say anything else about Frankenstein because everyone kind of knows the story more or less. But it's a very short classic, a very quick, easy read, and a really good one for wintertime. All right, another book that I would have mistakenly said is more autumnal, but after rereading it this past Victober, I can say no, it is definitely a good winter book as well. Any time of the year is great, but I think it has some really, really good winter descriptions, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I've talked about this book a lot lately because I read it recently for Victober, and like I said, there's some really good winter descriptions, particularly in the beginning of the book when she is at Lowood, and just some really, really good descriptions of the snow and the girls being outside and cold and kind of the house constantly being cold. I really remember remarking that there were just really lots of good descriptions of winter, and I think it's not necessarily just an autumnal book. It's very good for wintertime as well. Basically, if you don't know anything about Jane Eyre, we're following Jane from childhood all the way up through becoming a young adult, and she goes through challenge after challenge after challenge, and it is just a beautiful story about her life. Again, I don't really want to say too much more because you should just, if you don't know anything about Jane Eyre, you should just pick it up and read it and enjoy it. Alright, so we are getting progressively longer. We started with Frankenstein, which is quite short. We had Jane Eyre, which is a pretty good sized book. It's on the long side. And then I have this massive trilogy, which is well over 1,000 pages if you read all 3 books. And that is the Kristin Lavransdatter trilogy. I have The Wreath is book 1, The Wife is book 2, and then The Cross is book 3. So like I said, it's a trilogy. So it's 3 separate books, but it's really one story. And we are following Kristin her whole life, starting as a child up and through old age, really. And she lives in Norway in the Middle Ages. And so obviously Norway, you're getting a lot of good winter time scenes. Even though this takes place over decades and decades, you get a lot of good winter moments. There's such a coziness to them, and such rich descriptions of what life would have been like in Norway during this time period. I loved all of the details about their clothing and what they eat and what their houses are like, and it's just so richly descriptive in that way, which is really enjoyable, that kind of cozy domesticness. Kristin is a character, I will say, that I don't always love to be reading about. She makes some really infuriating choices, and it can be just really frustrating to spend time with her. But there's such depth and profoundness to these books, and despite that, I find there to be just so much beauty and a lot that you can just kind of sink into and really think about, which is why I would highly recommend it for any time of the year. But I think winter is a good time to just tackle some really big books, big ideas, and just really kind of sink into that. So I would recommend Kristin. And finally, I have some middle grade recommendations that, like I said, just didn't really fit in anywhere else. The first is a whole series, again, kind of cheating here, and that is the Little House series. So this is book 1, Little House in the Big Woods. And I am in the process of reading through the series. I did not read all of them as a kid, so I'm going back and reading all of them. And each book that I've read so far, I'm 3 or 4 books in, has some wonderful winter scenes, particularly Christmas time scenes. And I think, you know, if that's going to continue probably throughout the other books. There is, of course, a later book, The Long Winter, which is going to be perfect for winter time if I get to that in time. But even these earlier books just have such good wintertime moments also. Such warmth and beauty in these books. I love spending time with the Ingalls family and just seeing how they navigate daily life and what that was like for them, and how they are just coming together in times of hardship and trouble. And there's so much beauty and joy in these books, even when things are really, really hard, and you can't help but feel warm and cozy when you're reading the Little House books. Caddie, Woodlawn by Ryrie Brink is another middle grade that I read recently, last winter I believe, and absolutely loved this book. It has a lot of kind of similarities to the Little House series, but a little bit different. And this was inspired by Ryrie Brink's grandmother and her kind of real life experience, her stories. Caddie is such a strong little girl who is has such a fierceness to her, and I just absolutely loved this book. I listened to it, and it made a really, really fun listen. And lastly is Absolutely Truly. I talked about this in my most recent reads video, and this is a middle grade mystery, but it's not like very heavy on the mystery. There's just like a light sprinkling of mystery in there. But this takes place in New Hampshire. We're following this girl, Truly, who is one of 4 siblings. Their family has moved to New Hampshire kind of after her dad has come back from the war. He suffered an injury, he lost an arm in the war, and now they're moving the whole family to New Hampshire so that he can take over running the family bookstore with his sister. And there's lots of fun scenes in the bookstore. We're following Truly as she's navigating this change, not only in her own life, moving and changing schools and starting over again, but also just in her wider family unit as they're navigating what this means for their dad losing an arm, and kind of how to navigate the trauma that he has been through in the war. This book was so fun, so beautiful, and I absolutely loved it and will be wanting to read more books in this series. That's it for the books that I've read and recommend. I do want to include a couple of bonus TBR books that I am really, really excited to get to this winter, ones from my physical shelves. And these are all middle grade books. Middle grade, there are lots of really good winter middle grade books. Middle grade books just tend to do seasonal. This is the second book in the Heartwood Hotel series, The Greatest Gift. I will eventually talk more about book 1 because I read that recently, but like the covers are just so sweet and charming. This is a hotel for woodland creatures, and it is just cozy, warm sweetness. Then I have book 2 of the Emily of New Moon trilogy. This is Emily Climbs, and this cover is just absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I enjoyed Emily of New Moon, not as much as Anne. I still prefer Anne, but I'm eager to see kind of what book 2 holds. And I love Ella Montgomery's writing, and judging by the cover, this should take place at least a good part in winter and have some really beautiful Ella Montgomery winter writing, which I'm always here for. And then finally, I have Winterhouse by Ben Guterson. This says, a lavish hotel, a family secret, a book of puzzles, and a veil of magic. This kind of gives me, for some reason, Mysterious Benedict Society vibes, and I'm hoping that's the case. I love a good hotel setting in a book, especially in wintertime. I find that to be so fun and cozy. So I'm eager to give this a try. It has like a lot of puzzles, like it said. I need to see if I can find one. There's some illustrations and things. But yeah, there's like a lot of puzzles kind of included throughout. So I'm eager to see kind of what this one will be like. Alright, that's it. That was a lot of wintry books. I hope you found something on this list that maybe you haven't read yet that you would like to read this winter. Let me know some of your favorite winter books. I am always looking for more ideas and to just really round out that seasonal reading. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!